Jen's going to do this. Okay, I've been told it's time to start. Welcome, everyone. What a nice turnout. I recognize a lot of faces, so I know this presentation on apprenticeship may be a refresher for most of you. And hopefully, though, for some of you, a lot of you, then it's something that you will take away. And you know, my name is Greer Sisson, and I am the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship State Director in Iowa. And we oversee the entire state for registered apprenticeship programs. We administer them and then oversee the, provide technical assistance and oversee the companies if they need any type of assistance. And we work with companies to develop those programs. And we have a small little part of Illinois, the Quad City areas, that Iowa is responsible for. A little bit about me. I've been doing this job. This is where I feel like, okay, this is the part where I always tell away my age, but that's okay. I've been doing this job for 19 years. Prior to that, I spent 20 years in the United States Air Force as an air traffic controller. And prior to that, I spent a year in the Baltimore Neighborhood Art Circus. So you kind of follow that career projection or path, and it makes absolutely no sense, but the one that I have to fall back on most often to get through a day sometimes is being the clown. So it has helped. So never just kind of dismiss what you do prior to what you're doing now, because you may need that experience later. Again, welcome, and I do appreciate everyone being here. We have a very, very good panel who's going to answer all of your questions that you have about registered apprenticeship, and I'd like to introduce them, and so I'm going to have to get somewhere where I have a little bit of light. And also, I kind of like to keep any kind of presentations that I give pretty informal. So if you really do have a burning question that you want to ask, just raise your hand and ask. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Gretchen Watzner. Oh, I had it right. and Gretchen is currently the coordinator for student leadership at engagement at Central Campus, Iowa's premier regional career academy. Gretchen's path in education has included teaching family and consumer science classes in Des Moines Public Schools and Waukee Public Schools. Let's see. And she's worked on the Iowa Department of Education Team Nutrition Grant in 2007 and mentoring new teachers to the professions as an induction coach to the Des Moines Public Schools. Gretchen holds a Bachelor's of Science in Family and Consumer Science Education with a health endorsement from the Iowa State University, a Master of Effective Teaching and Viterbo University, and Advanced Certificate of Study in Educational Leadership from the University of Northern Iowa. Gretchen lives a full life with her husband and 3 boys. She spends her time away from school as an active mentor of a youth group, a Boy Scout troop supporting her boys in the community, youth, and developing long life skills. So I'd like you to welcome Gretchen. Our next person I'd like to introduce you to, and probably a lot of you in this room already knows, is Jill Lippincott. And Jill is a project manager for the Iowa Department of Iowa Economic Development Authority 15B Apprenticeship Funding Program since 2016. In addition to managing the 15B program, Jill is also the project manager of the 260G program, a training program supported by IEDA in partnership with the community colleges and the state's targeted small business program, which supports businesses, owners that are women, minorities, individuals with disabilities, or veterans with service-connected disabilities. Prior to working for the state of Iowa, Jill helped United Way of Central Iowa manage its annual and long-term strategic planning process and led individual missions-driven projects focused on community impact, fundraising, and quality improvement. Prior to working with the United Way, Jill worked and managed a branch of software companies located in Denver, Colorado, with clients all across North America. Jill holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Colorado, Denver. She currently resides in Des Moines with her 2 sons, 2 dogs, and a husband. And last but not least is Amy Beller, who spent the first 10 years of her career working for the United States Senator Tom Harkin. She held numerous positions with the Senator's office, ranging from scheduler, veterans and military constituent caseworker, and state outreach coordinator. She spent 2 years developing the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizens Engagement at Drake University. Amy was the Assistant Director for Programming and External Relations, where she helped create the Institute Community and University Programming, DC Experience, Scholarship Program, and was the liaison to the Senator and Mrs. Harkin. In December 2016, in 2016, Amy moved to Iowa Workforce Development as the Registered Apprenticeship Program Coordinator to assist in the management of the Apprenticeship USA Accelerator and State Expansion Grant. Amy earned a Master's in Public Administration from Drake University and the Bachelor's degree from Buena Vista University. She resides in Carlisle with her husband, Justin, and 2 young daughters. Daughters and sons. So welcome, Amy. And you guys are going to have the opportunity to ask them questions and also hear a lot more about their programs. But I know for most of you, this is going to be another refresher, but like I always say, repetition aids comprehension. We're going to very quickly go through. How many in here are very, very familiar with registered apprenticeship? Show of hands. Good. Somewhat familiar with registered apprenticeship? I'm in the wrong room. Anybody? What is registered apprenticeship? Right, I'm in the wrong room. Nobody. Good. Okay, so good. So most of you have a good understanding, which means I'm going to be able to move through these very quickly, and Jen's going to drive that for me. So what is registered apprenticeship? That's always the big question. That's the question that we get all the time. What is registered apprenticeship, and how does it differ, Jen? And if you think of registered apprenticeship, it's actually quite easy. I know you're hearing probably conversations that registered apprenticeship can be difficult, registered apprenticeship can be complicated, but it is very easy. And if you think of it just in 5 easy steps, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 5 core components of registered apprenticeship is there has to be an employer. You could go ahead. There has to be an employer involved. That is the most important thing of registered apprenticeship, that you have to have employer involvement when you have a registered apprenticeship program. Doesn't necessarily mean that the employer has to own the standards. We can do those different ways, but there has to be an employer involved. There has to be on-the-job learning. Registered apprenticeship is a hands-on. Remember, registered apprenticeship differs from internship programs, job training programs, for the simple fact that registered apprenticeship is employment first. So there has to be an employer, and that employer has to provide the on-the-job learning. Now, this is something that some of you may not know, and that is a very important component of registered apprenticeship that has to be there, is that registered apprenticeship has to have what we call related training instruction. So you can call it job-related education, schooling, but that has to be a component of registered apprenticeship program. There are many ways that an employer or a sponsor of a registered apprenticeship program can do this job-related education, but it has to be a component of registered apprenticeship. There has to be rewards for skills gained, basically mean that a registered apprentice has to be paid. And as their skills increase, their wages would increase, which would make sense. As you get better in your job, then your wages increase. If I'm going too fast on these, just somebody yell, but for most part, I think this is just a refresher. And then there's a national occupation credential. Every registered apprenticeship program at completion or graduation of that apprenticeship program leads to a national certification in that skilled occupation that the apprentice served in. So, for example, if they were an automotive tech, that certificate would say automotive tech. It is signed by the Secretary of Labor and the apprenticeship sponsor. So you've heard me say sponsor quite a few times. Once those 5 elements are made and standards of apprenticeship are developed, then we start referring to that company or that program as the apprenticeship sponsor. And notice that it says a sponsor is any person, association, committee, organization in an apprenticeship program whose name the program is to be registered or approved, okay? And that's very important because that allows us a lot of flexibility on how we design programs, how we work with organizations, who's registered. Is the person who owns the standards registered, or are the employers who are adopting the standards are registered? There's a lot of ways that we can work with and be flexible with those sponsors, depending upon their needs. The basic responsibilities of a sponsor is that the apprentice has to be employed, like I said, that they train on the job, that they do the classes. But their main thing when we meet with companies, there has to be a desire to develop a skilled workforce. If there's not that desire and that need there, then the company either A, maybe doesn't need a registered apprenticeship program, or they just don't want the functions of a registered apprenticeship program. So therefore, though, but a lot of times, they do want to partner. And Adie's shaking his head because Central Campus, which Gretchen's going to talk about, is a good example about how they can still have that partnership within a registered apprenticeship. The minimum qualifications of an apprentice is that they have to be 16, 17 years old. Did everybody know that? Start a registered apprenticeship program? Minimum qualifications, which lends registered apprenticeship program to a very good youth-based school to apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship programs, and allows employers to be able to start those apprentices a little bit early. You can go. Okay. Sure.
So is it 16 or is it 17?
It's between 16 and 17. 16. Let me answer that directly. 16 years old. And then usually apprenticeship programs are starting between 16 and 17 years old for our youth programs. But the minimum age that's a good question, minimum age for a registered apprenticeship program is 16. Okay, registered apprenticeship program process developed. It's really easy, and that's 5 steps too. We don't like to do anything over one hand, obviously, in this job. So step 1 is that you can contact my office, you can contact Iowa Workforce Development, you can contact Iowa Economic Development, you can talk to any of the agencies, federal agency, state agency, and the very first thing is, I'd like to have a registered apprenticeship program. Step 2, we're going to work with you to help build that program. And notice I said work with you to help build that program. We're not going to impose a program upon you. We're not going to tell you that this is what you have to do. We're going to hear what your needs are for the employers in the room, and then we're going to work with you to develop and build that program. For those of you who are educators or who are working with companies and things like that, we're also going to be working with the educators because we need them as part of the related training providers. So there's lots of different partners that now we're going to start working with to develop that program. We're going to do a check to make sure that no program is ready to be registered until the employer, the sponsor, says, yes, this is what I want. So we're going to review and approve and customize those standards to meet those employers' needs. Then it's going to come to, eventually, it will come to the Office of Apprenticeship, and that program will be registered. Now, and then after that, the employer implements his registered apprenticeship program. How long does everybody think that process would take? 6 to 8 months?
3 to 6.
3 to 6? What'd you say? What did Rob say? A day and a half. He's right. No, a day and a half. Actually, and the reason I want to say this is because a registered apprenticeship program basically works at the speed of that employer, that sponsor. So it depends. We could have a registered apprenticeship program, and honestly, when I was working as a rep, I put together a set of standards. I took it up to Cedar Rapids the very next day, and the employer signed it. 2 days. And it wasn't because that was like abnormal. We already knew they were going to be partnering with Kirkwood. I already had the curriculum outline. It was a pretty standard tool and die program. So we put the standards together, and they were ready to go. Then you have other programs that may be a little bit more complicated or bigger, or they're adding occupations, and then that can take a little longer. So there is no set time on how long it takes for a registered apprenticeship program to get registered. It all depends on the speed of the employer and if those pieces are there. and I can't wait for Gretchen to talk, and maybe Dee will jump in, because they had a lot of moving parts, and they also had a very new system where they were having a registered school as the sponsor. So we were going to show you a video, because we thought that'd be fun, of a registered apprenticeship culinary arts program that's here in Iowa. It's done in Eastern Iowa in conjunction with our Eastern Iowa Community College. And this is our chef program that was recognized as a trailblazer. And they went to Washington and got all kinds of awards for this.
Why a chef? It's in your blood. Once you got the passion, we call it the juice, it's hard to give up. It's hard to give up. Our Culinary Arts Apprenticeship program is in fact a degreed program as well as a journeyman status on-the-job training program. The program is a 62 credit program. Students work 6,000 hours on the job training in 9 areas of concentration, everything from stewarding and washing dishes all the way up to being lead sous chef. So by the time they graduate, they are sous chef status or second in command journeyman cooks. We have over 130 students, apprentices, and we have about 70 sponsoring houses within a 90-mile radius.
The local chefs here and the local food service establishments realize that if you're in this program, you're serious. It's not just a job, you're leading down a career path. You're given some more responsibility and kind of helped along the way to advance wherever you're at, specifically because you're in the program.
Where we differ from the traditional culinary school is our students come 1 day a week for theory and for their labs. The rest of the time they're actually working with journeyman chefs and executive chefs, honing their skill.
There's the classical training, in the lab and classroom from certified instructors, but you're also learning how it really works out in the field as well.
Culinary schools, lots of students go 5 days a week and they have classes and they take their labs. We throw our students to the wolves right off the bat.
I've worked at several different places, everything from country clubs to banquet facilities. Right now I'm at a local steakhouse.
Our students are geared towards the hands-on learning, and they get it. They get it. Our instructors are all industry people who come to class and teach a class 1 day a week, and the rest of the time they're actually out in the industry training their people and running a business.
There's a lot of good restaurants in the area, a lot of good chefs. I've learned from some of the best chefs in the area here. It's been an excellent experience. In fact, a lot of the chefs that I've worked for in the field, I've also had as instructors at the school here as well.
Apprenticeship is earn while you learn. We have non-traditional students who still have to pay the rent. They have children. They have gas and light bills, so it is earn while you learn. They are actually paid a wage while they train. So when they graduate, they have a journeyman and an associate's degree, and they're ready to go.
This program allows you, the ability to make a living while you're going to school, and it's applicable to what you're going to school for.
An executive chef that's interviewing and hiring would much rather have someone who has been in the field, knows the equipment, knows the sense of urgency, versus someone who comes out with book smart. I'll match my students against culinary school graduates any day of the week.
I would much prefer an apprenticeship program where it's a instructor-based training in a lab setting in conjunction with actual on-the-job training. I think that's definitely the best way to go.
We're making journeyman chefs capable of going anywhere in the United States and within a matter of days be able to throw down with the best of them.
And I love that video, and I love that program, and Brad Scott is a ball of energy. And I think that, and one of the exciting things is that's in culinary arts. And I wanted to show that in particular, So to let you know that registered apprenticeship is not only in construction, it is not only in manufacturing, and is not only designed for union programs. Is registered apprenticeship all of that? Yes. And then it is so much more. There are over 1,400 apprenticeable occupations in energy, IT, healthcare, finance, almost, and if it's not there, you can have one created and work on it. Agriculture, yes, and ag. And matter of fact, Wisconsin has a great dairy a registered apprenticeship program. So with that, you've heard me long enough, and everybody in this room has heard me so much, I feel like, oh no, it's me again. We're going to go ahead and let our panel talk about their programs. I hope you get prepared to ask them lots of questions, challenge them with questions. And so without any further ado, we're going to have Gretchen talk about Central Campus Registered Apprenticeship Program and Pre-Apprenticeship.
About the pre-apprenticeship.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, I'm going to read the one about the quality pre-apprenticeship program. Central Campus has two programs. They have a quality pre-apprenticeship program, and they literally have a registered apprenticeship program. So they are our first and only right now in the state of Iowa school registered apprenticeship program. So, but what is the word quality pre-apprenticeship? And a quality pre-apprenticeship contributes to the development of a diverse and skilled workforce by preparing the participants to meet the basic qualifications to enter into one or more registered apprenticeship programs. So basically, Central Campus at any quality pre-apprenticeship program, what they're doing is partnering with employers who already have registered apprenticeship programs, and they're working with them to design a curriculum that will allow that pool to be able to get into a registered apprenticeship program. That is what a quality pre-apprenticeship program is. Central Campus has direct ties and direct connections with already registered apprenticeship programs. But what they didn't have outside, and that is through their construction program, but what they didn't have, they had a lot of students who were doing a lot of learning and hands-on training to connections to businesses outside of construction. So that's when they started to take up the second part, and we're going to let Gretchen talk to you about both of those programs.
Good morning. In our quality pre-apprenticeship programs, as Greer said, we are really focused on our skilled trades. Those are groups that we are working with out in our business world. Chuck Gassman from Bell Brothers is here. He has an established apprenticeship program, but he's partnering with us at Central Campus to make sure that our kids are leaving us empowered with skills to hopefully come into his apprenticeship program and be one step ahead of kids that are just coming out of high school thinking that they want to do something along that line. We also have other programs in those areas. Our welding program, our painting program, our carpentry program, where those programs have their apprenticeships established or other pathways for students to gain those skills. And so with those programs, we offer pre-apprenticeship. When we branch out of that area into areas that have less established apprenticeships, that's where we at Central Campus are becoming the sponsor for apprenticeships. And this last year, we started this work. It was big. There were many moving parts, but the Department of Labor, Greer and Jim Whiteman were amazing and working with us to get those sponsorships done. So when we go, I'm going to have you go back one. When we look at this last year, we were able to establish solid apprenticeships in our welding program and our early childhood programs. You can see that we had 9 students total for welding and 25 in early childhood that we established this past year. And on the next slide, it shows you all the different companies that worked with us and sponsoring our students through the apprenticeship program. We're the sponsor, they're the employer, our student and the employer are benefiting from those skills, and our students are leaving our campus empowered with more skills than we could possibly provide on a day because they are getting actual work-based learning on the job, paid apprenticeship work that they can then take with them to the next level when they graduate from high school. And then as we look forward to what's upcoming, we're working with our automotive in the finalizing stages. As Greer said, establishing apprenticeship can be short and sweet, or it can take a while. Our cybersecurity we've started on at the very end of the school year. The finalized papers were sent to me yesterday, and we are ready to rock and roll with that in August and getting those kids signed up. Our automotive program has many competencies that those students have to meet. We've been working on that since December, back and forth with Jim and our teachers, and that will be ready to sign off in the fall, and then we're going to go into looking at our CNA program, some more of our cybersecurity programs, and then partnering with other teachers in our building where we can be good sponsors and stewards of our students' learning going forward using apprenticeship. Thank you.
It is truly an amazing program, and it is truly amazing what Central Campus has taken the bull by the horns to not only meet the needs of their students, but to meet the needs of the businesses and to ensure that that their students are on the career path. And more than a path, their students are in a career while they're in high school. So, I mean, that is something that I'm hoping will catch fire in Iowa, and they surely are. Central Campus surely are the beacon of how it should be done because they are doing a fantastic job. So our next person that would like to speak to you is Amy Beller from Iowa Workforce Development, who's going to talk to you about the apprenticeship grants and some of the initiatives that Workforce Development is working on.
Thank you, Greer. We received $90 million. The federal, actually Department of Labor decided last year that they were going to give out $90 million nationally on registered apprenticeship to grow and expand registered apprenticeship programs and to expand into new programs. You can do the next slide. And they wanted to make sure that we were able to expand into underrepresented populations too. Out of that $90 million, Iowa Workforce Development received $2 million to help do basically 4 different goals. The first goal we had was to double the amount of registered apprentices that we had in Iowa. The second goal is to start 143 new registered apprenticeship programs. The third is to expand into IT, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. Just like Greer said, there's a lot of variety of occupations out there that are apprenticeable, and we want to make sure that we're able to get into high growth, high demand industries. And the fourth goal was to expand into underrepresented populations, which include women, minority, youth, and individuals with disabilities. Next slide. And one of the unique opportunities that Iowa Works and our Iowa Workforce Development Office has is that we have a lot of job seekers coming into our offices on a daily basis. Underneath the Workforce Investment and Opportunities Act, we are able to give benefits to job seekers to help them with their training and other supportive services. As a registered apprenticeship sponsor, the sponsor is able to be on what's called our eligible training provider list. With being a sponsor, you can be on this list and able to receive funds if a participant or a job seeker is entitled to benefits. So if they're entitled to training benefits or supportive services, then you are able to get money as a sponsor. There's not just a blanket money for sponsorship, but it has to be that your registered apprentices are able to receive funds through our WIOA services. Also, we have a business service team members that are helping create, in partnership with Department of Labor, helping to create those programs and walk through the standards of apprenticeship. Next slide.
Thank you, Amy. As Amy said, there is some funding available, and I get the fun part of talking about that funding offered through Iowa Economic Development Authority. First slide, please. So in 2014, our then Governor, Terry Branstad, signed the Iowa Apprenticeship Act. It's basically allowed $3 billion annually in grant funding to be provided to registered apprenticeship sponsors that apply. So that's the key. As a registered apprenticeship sponsor, first through the Department of Labor, you must be registered through the Department of Labor, and then you must also apply. So we worked closely with the Department of Labor to manage this grant, and grants are non-competitive and available, like I said, to all registered apprenticeship programs that apply. And you can be a sponsor, which is a term Greer used, or a lead sponsor, which is sometimes what we call intermediaries. Funds are awarded based upon the number of apprentices that you have and some of the training hours that you provide. So as you have more and more apprentices, the more that you are eligible for award funds. There is a complicated formula that is described in some of the handouts that I've left in the back of the room. But essentially, all that apply receive funds, and they're given a proportion of the funds as part of how many apprentices they have. And applications are due each January. So January 2018 will be the next window for application. And it's based off of the number of registered apprentices, that you had in calendar year 2017. So now is a really good time, because if you start doing the math and put those numbers together, as Greer was saying, if you start putting together a registered apprenticeship program and you get that done in the next 3 months, and you have apprentices come on in this next year, you would be eligible to apply for funding in January 2018. AD did just that. He got their registered apprenticeship standards done just in the nick of time in 2016, and then they applied this year for funding and were awarded some funds. Thank you.
That was a quick overview, and I'm hoping everyone has some questions. I certainly have some follow-ups, and while you guys are trying, does anybody have any questions right now that you have? Let's start with you then. We'll start with the questions.
For the 15B funding, like if a nonprofit would get an apprenticeship started, would they be eligible for that funding?
So for example, one public schools received the funding for 15B. Thank you. And the limitations more are on what it can be applied towards. So if you are conducting a registered apprenticeship program through the Department of Labor, it can be applied toward the cost of conducting and maintaining your apprenticeship program. So we make sure that it's going toward those costs. But if you are a registered sponsor through the Department of Labor, you're eligible to apply. Wage standards?
As far as this time, you
Yeah.
probably can hear me anyway. When you say wage standards,
Yeah, so how do I know? As someone who's through the program, I'm in the union environment. We have through contract, we have wages already set. So how do I know, are the wages that we have now suitable, that would meet the guidelines for?
there's no wage standard guidelines for the program.
There's no wage standard guidelines for your program, and you'll hear Greer say this a number of times. Your program is really based upon you as a business and what you are wanting to start somebody out at, and somebody at, and the wage progression along the way is really the only requirement.
Minimum wage.
Yep. It has to start off at $7.25.
Yeah, minimum wage.
It has to start off at $7.25, our minimum wage, and then it marks up on the progression of whatever the business decides.
One of your goals, Amy, is diversity in the apprenticeship program. And that's one of the things in our industry that we're working towards. How can we collaborate on that to get more diversity in our apprenticeship program?
Well, I would love to talk to you independently, one-on-one, and talk about what you're doing. I can also tell you what partners we're working with. We're working with a lot of state partners within the Department of Human Rights, Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation, our TAP counselors. The list goes on trying to get the word out in the diverse communities, along with our minority unemployment subcommittee that we have within our Iowa Workforce Development. So I would love to speak with you after this.
So when these students are working, so they get employed, but let's talk about the welders for example. So they have a job, they're getting a job, I'm assuming it's not it's part-time and not full-time. Is there a required number of hours they're supposed to work per week or per month?
In our program, our students work, part of it is during the time they meet in their class. So instead of being in their classroom working towards their competencies, they're on the job site working towards those competencies. Some of them are working evenings and weekends also. We have one amazing young man who worked for one company during the school year, and at the end of the school year, he's now working for another company who came to Central Campus and said, I see you have this program, do you have a welder for me? So we took him down to our welding shop where he got to see the students work and said, we want you. So now he's working for that company. There's not a minimum set of hours. Our program standards are based on competencies that the students can meet. And what we try to do is make sure that the partnership is well paired between us as the sponsor providing classroom education and our employer, which is providing on the job work-based learning for the student to help them meet those competencies so that they can earn their certificate through the Department of Labor.
So when the student graduates from high school, then will they have some kind of report or some kind of, because they may not have finished, gotten the certificate at that point, but say this is how many hours they have and this is what they completed?
Most of our students will not be completed by the time they graduate from high school because I believe in the welding program, it's 6,000 hours. And so through the Department of Labor, we do a small amount of record keeping where the employer who signs off at any time can be asked to provide how many hours has the student worked and what competencies have they completed so that they can take that on to an apprenticeship program. And depending on how like our welding program, they may take what they've learned and want to join the local 33 pipe fitters and steam fitters or the iron workers. And then that actual union or apprenticeship program can decide where the student's going to start out based on the knowledge that they're coming in with. And so that's not a decision we get to make for them, but our hope is that the union in this case would be able to say, this student has a lot of the competencies that we teach in the very beginning of our program. We've seen this student work on job sites through the sponsors, whether it's a union or Mid-America Energy or Bell Brothers, knowing that they're coming with a solid background and hopefully giving them some credit towards that.
So do you then, before they graduate, work with them to look for employment?
I'm lucky because I get to work with amazing teachers every day that have great connections to industry partners in their field and work to help our students find employment. So they usually come to me and say, this company wants to sign program standards and bring on these students. And then I just have to enter the information in our Rapids program through the Department of Labor to establish that.
And that's two programs that they have, the pre-apprenticeship, which is the pool. They're registered apprenticeship programs. Those employers are adopting those standards, and they are employed. And they are considered apprentices of that current employer. And even once they graduate from school, their related training instruction will be complete. But they're on the job learning with that employer and will continue on through completion of their apprenticeship program. Should do that. Do you you wanted to add?
Gretchen did a great job, but one thing I wanted to add was the importance of the pre-apprenticeship program and our partnerships with our community college, DMAC in particular, having competencies and standards set. What the hard work was aligning that then to the needs of the employers, and so that we make sure that our pre-apprenticeship programs and then certainly on-the-job training program is aligned with the needs of that employer, and that is what I think has been most beneficial. But having 300 business partners across our 9 career academies as our pre-apprenticeship programs was really a huge stepping stone for us. And then certainly when she says she makes it easy, Greer's team really goes out of their way to make sure that her teams work with ours, and some were faster than others. But our mission is to ensure that all of our programs that are pre-apprenticeships can be sponsored registered apprenticeships because of our business partners and their willingness to hire our students. And so, and then, like I said, the community college being both concurrent and then a registered apprenticeship huge win-win-win all the way around for our community and our students. So we get 15B grant funds from them for being involved. They get directly aligned with DMAC and as well as other community college providers for an associate's degree, credits towards that, and then they earn while they learn. And so want to recognize that part of it as well.
So one of the things that we are struggling with is with our insurance company and hiring 16, 17, under 18-year-old people to work in the field. And insurance companies are having a lot of heartburn over that because they're underage, especially driving company vehicles, that kind of thing. Is there any work being done with insurance companies if there's a student pre-apprenticeship program or a high school apprenticeship program to help with that?
And you know that is a big question for the individual company. Yes, your insurance. And that's why we don't see a lot of 16, 17-year-olds in registered apprenticeship programs at individual companies because of just that. Now, we do have a bulletin that I'll be more than happy to send out to, and it is a youth apprenticeship, school to apprenticeship bulletin that does address some of those areas with insurance. I know that was a question with the school districts as well. How do we handle that? Unfortunately, I can't answer individual companies as far as here's how we address that. It does need to be addressed, and we at the Office of Apprenticeship do hear it, and we are looking at that, especially if one of the focuses is going to be on youth apprenticeships and school apprenticeship programs. That question's going to come up a lot. So unfortunately, I can send you, Chuck, though, that bulletin on that has some information about insurance.
The Department of Labor too, then, as far as youth working and number of hours and operating machines and vehicles, so.
Yes, there is. And that actually doesn't fall under the Department of Labor for us, the Office of Apprenticeship. That falls under the Department of Labor under wage and hour. And though, and I also have that I don't want to call it, it's not the regulation. There is carve-outs for registered apprenticeship on things that they can do, and it's more than just if a high school student gets a job. However, there are still pieces of equipment that a 16-year-old cannot do. For example, a CNA within the wage and hour regulation for youth working can't operate a lift. And that's very important in some of our homes. But there are things that they can do, and employers may be very surprised at how much they actually can do if they look at the regulation, through these registered apprenticeship program.
Where they're welding and operating machines and that kind of thing. I mean, they can't even run an industrial mower or anything like that. And so,
But don't let that discourage you, because when you write your standards and competencies, there's basic entry level things that they can do while they're 16, and the key is to keep them engaged in the program because they're going to be able to do more. Like for instance, our welders, it wasn't until their second semester, and as they turned 18, I mean, they went from $12 to $15, and the top end, the young man that she spoke of, earned $17 an hour in his second semester, and Mid-America took him on right out of high school. Because he stayed engaged in the program and was able to do certain things while he was under 18 in that program. But again, that is directly aligned with your employers and defining what that is. But oftentimes a lot of businesses and employers, as you approach them, will say, no, because of insurance reasons. But we kept engaging with them to say, well, what can they do? And then we were able to define that.
So something else too, as far as the number of hours, with parental consent, that really determines the number of hours, is that getting that parental consent?
Yes. And the other thing too, it doesn't have to be at their job site. So we had some very flexible employers come to our school because of transportation issues and student poverty. They said, no, we're going to bring the work to him, and was able to earn the hours on our campus using our equipment while working for this
if
employer.
they're earning credit, do they
it's usually, it's at after-school hours is we have to be suited to.
But as far as in the career apprentice program, there's a on-the-job training hour requirement. In our apprenticeship program, it's a 4-year apprenticeship program and then 8,000 hours of on-the-job training. And one of the problems is you can have a 2-pointer community college student come to us, they'll have their didactic part of it done, but they still have to do 8,000 hours of on-the-job training. And the same way with career apprentices, so they may have a first year of apprenticeship coming out of high school done, but they have to make up that 2,000 hours of on-the-job training. So it's still, that 4 years of on-the-job training.
And Chuck is on our board of our Skilled Trades Alliance, and one of the conversations that we're having is how can they get those while they're in high school, to some credit, to some degree, because the advantage of our students is they see immediate earning potential, and that the window of full earning potential is a very, very small window, and it gives them hope to stay engaged in school.
And I want to say, to make sure that everyone knows too, we're talking on-the-job learning and schooling, basically, the related training instruction. It is the sponsor can award credit. So when someone's coming to you, Chuck, and I know you know this, but if someone's coming to you from, let's say that you're using a pre-apprentice from the pre-apprentice pool, you can give credit for that time. So all of these things we're looking at that's going to be to help the employer, to help the sponsor, to help the business. How do we do it within what their needs are? If Chuck is going to use one of Central Campus's students into his apprenticeship program, one of the advantages of using that, one is they're having that skill, and that he can count that skill when they bring him into his program, shortening his time. So it's a win-win for both of these businesses. They can do it from his pool of pre-apprenticeship programs, or if they were part of his Central Campus's registered apprenticeship program, obviously the school's going to say, here's the curriculum that they have to take, but Chuck could give them credit for the on-the-job because it's apples and oranges. It doesn't have to be, it has to go together. You may have an individual who you give 3 years experience for in a 4-year program for on-the-job learning, but has never had any schooling and has to take all the schooling. Or they've already graduated, let's say from DMAC. Well, you're not going to send them back to DMAC. You're going to give them the credit for that schooling, but yet they may only get 6 months of on-the-job learning. So that is, again, rests with the employer. Another question?
Is there also a benefit in certain situations for the employer to have the wages of an apprentice that they've taken on paid underneath the act? The National Restaurant Association and the National Hotel and Lodging Association just got a registered apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor. And so I'm with the Iowa Restaurant Association, and I have a career and technical education program in 29 schools for students that are interested in pursuing restaurant management positions or on the hotel side. And I've been told now that we have a registered apprenticeship program that I can go to local workforce boards if I have any of my members or employers that are interested in identifying apprentices within their company and could get anywhere between 50 to 75% of the wages paid.
That is underneath WIOA, and it's underneath Title I Adult, Dislocated, and Youth programs, and they would have to qualify for those programs, and then underneath the qualifications, and we'd figure out which actual benefits they're able to be entitled to, and if we have any other grant funding available at the time. So, but they have to do that before they become a registered apprentice. So they can't have a job offer on the table. It has to be before. So please, if you're thinking of, if you have job seekers out there that are looking at having additional benefits for training and supportive services, send them down to one of our Iowa Works office, and our staff there will help move them through the process as quickly as possible.
Other questions?
Okay. great. I have a couple. And so keeping with that with Amy, how does registered apprenticeship then differ from, your work-based learning programs?
Well, there's 5 major components that that a registered apprenticeship program differs from other work-based learning initiatives. One, the registered apprentice actually gets paid throughout the program, and that payment is they're an employee first, so they have to be hired and go through that interview process and be hired on through the business. As Greer and all of us have mentioned, the second component is that there's on-the-job learning and related training instruction that occurs simultaneously, or one could happen before the other depending on how the business chooses. So you have to have both of those components at the table in order to be a registered apprenticeship program. The number 3 is that we have a standard of apprenticeship that it outlines the whole entire program. So the registered apprentice and the business knows from the very beginning what the strategy is throughout the program. It talks about the on-the-job learning tasks. It talks about the related training instruction classes that will be taken, the wage progression, and the credential at the end. So it outlines every single step so there's clarity on both sides. Also, the 4th component is that the business has to provide a one-on-one mentor. That mentor could change throughout the task that the registered apprentice does from time to time, but you have to have that mentor there because in the Fitzgerald Act, we always want to look at the safety and welfare of the registered apprentice. That's the key component. And then the 5th, as I mentioned before, that you get that credential at the end. So it's an industry-recognized portable credential that Department of Labor gives to the registered apprentice, recognizing that they know all the components and are proficient within that occupation. So those are the 5 differences of registered apprentice versus other work-based learning initiatives.
Thank you, Amy. And we've talked a lot about partnering with the schools, school to youth. Gretchen, can apprentices get college credits while they're in registered apprenticeship programs, or how does that work?
One of the really nice things about our program at Central Campus is our students get high school credit. They receive dual credit through a college. And we currently are partnering with DMAC, Iowa Central, and Indian Hills, depending on our programming and the community college. And they get the apprenticeship credit for the work that they're doing, whether that's the in the classroom learning or the on-the-job meeting of the competencies. So our students have the advantage of being able to earn money while they learn, and they can earn college credit while they learn as they work towards their graduating high school credits.
Jill, thank you, Gretchen. Jill, you see a lot of the apprenticeship programs who come through with the 15B. So what type of occupations through registered apprenticeship, and can you tell us about how long those occupations are when you're doing
Sure.
this?
There are over, 1,000 occupations that are register apprenticeshipable. That's a word. So, anywhere from, we heard about the culinary arts program, from customer service, in emerging technology industries. There are anything you can imagine. And if there isn't something, it can be created, as Greer talked about. So those standards can be created through the Department of Labor. So we see a lot as partners with Department of Labor to administer 15B. And what I also get to see is how long those programs are. So they can range anywhere from 1 to 6 years. Most are about 4 years or so. And as a part of that, the registered apprenticeship, or the registered apprentice, then receives 144 at a minimum technical instruction hours, but they receive 2,000 on-the-job training hours in 1 year and for each year of their apprentice. So there's just a combination, and they can be a combination of time-based apprenticeship programs or competency-based or a hybrid. So if you have an apprentice who is, progressing through the apprenticeship program, or you anticipate that, then the hybrid program might be the best, where you have a competency-based versus the time-based requirements for them to progress at the different skill levels. But again, and I can't stress this enough, I know Greer talks about it a lot, it's really based upon your needs as a business and working with you, what you know as part of maybe training programs that you already have in place that work well, or things that you know just are going to be a requirement. You have to spend this many hours, or it's a standard in our industry that this many hours are spent doing this type of task. So they really work with you to define that for your industry.
We have a question. Well,
So can the on-the-job training hours be competency-based? Because isn't there like a job task inventory that when I'm doing my OJT, I'm checking off that I'm exhibiting these skill areas? So is that also allowable? Or if I meet the competency and it's supposed to take me 20 hours on the job, but I need it after 10, I get my 20 hours?
And Greer, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've set up your standards that way, so it's a competency-based versus time-based, then yes.
a competency-based program is not constrained by hours. The only thing that the regulation states is that a registered apprenticeship program must be a minimum of 2,000 hours. So for us to put it into the system, then we have to show. But for example, Kim, if you were doing mechatronics and you did that competency-based, it's not confined to hours. Now, and then there's a hybrid program that has like a range of hours, like between 500 to 1,000 hours to finish a certain task. I'll say task in that case. The thing that happens with our competency-based programs that I see now is that the on-the-job learning is in competency, but if they're going to the school, that's in classes or hours. So we only have one community college that has a competency for the school and for the OJT, and that's in Butte. And so other than that, you'll probably see a mix of that, but competency programs are great, and we're changing over to more and more competencies. So, and does anybody else have any questions on that? On competency? Not all occupations right now are competency-based, by the way.
Gretchen, could you elaborate a little bit more? Because you have just done an outstanding job with our instructors to really align competencies with the job-based requirements. Can you talk a little bit more about that process and working with teachers and Greer's team to get those standards and competencies in place and what that entails?
In the fall, I was smart enough to realize I was not an expert at this. I knew very little. And so I invited Greer's team in to meet with our staff, and we literally sat in our meeting area, and we had DMAC present on internships and Jim Whiteman present on apprenticeships. And then our teachers spent the afternoon deciding, where do I best align? And our teachers who best aligned with apprenticeships through their industry and through their college competencies, because most of our courses at Central Campus offer college credit, sat at tables and worked with their career academies and to decide where could we best align to offer our students an apprenticeship so that when they leave here stronger. And so when our industry gains them, they gain employees who are engageable and ready to work and have some content knowledge. And so we literally sat in career teams, and Jim bounced around table to table, helping teachers figure out, what do I need to do at the minimum? What can I do at the maximum? And how do I make those align to meet what I need to do as a teacher at Central Campus to meet my credentials that I need to meet for the community college to offer credit and be aligned with that, and to best support the employers who are willing to take on my students through the apprenticeship and work with them. And so that work sounded daunting when we began, but as we worked through it, it was a very easy process, because what happened is the Department of Labor already has multiple programs established with program standards, and we were able to pick and choose the ones that served our employers, our students, and our programs the best, and aligned all three of those things to make a solid program standards for everybody to sign off on and feel confident in what we were going to provide educationally and work-based learning-wise, so everybody comes out with a win.
We have time for about one more question.
I was just going to ask, you said something about companies have the apprenticeships or they're the partners. So how do students earn dual credit if you go through a company and not through a local college, community college, to set up a program?
Say that one more time.
So if students are going to earn dual credit, we either have to have a teacher with a master's
Yep.
or go through the community college. So if you set up the apprenticeship through the company, how do students earn dual credit?
Our students are earning credit in our classrooms through classroom instruction, as well as their on-the-job training that they're receiving in their company, and they're working outside of the school day to get some of that on-the-job training.
So it's not going to be dual credit if it's just through the company.
At Central Campus, all of our classes, our students are enrolled in our classes at Central Campus, which are dual credit through the community college, and the apprenticeship is in addition to that, not instead of.
Oh, you guys have been great, and I know that you have more questions, but there is one question that I have to ask because it's very near and dear to my heart, and then I'm going to let Amy just tell you where you can get more resources. But Jill, can our veterans, how do veterans work? I have to always mention this because it is very important. Talk to us about veterans and registered apprenticeship.
So those that are eligible for GI Bill benefits can also apply those benefits to a registered apprenticeship program. So not only can you apply your GI Bill benefits, but you're also earning as an apprenticeship as well. You can earn a wage. And that is very near and dear to Greer. She is a veteran herself, and we applaud for her for that as well.
Just want that to be mentioned. And okay, so does anybody have any really quick last questions? If not, I'm going to ask Amy if she just could talk to you about where to find more information, how to find more information if you're interested in registered apprenticeship. Those of you who are, go ahead, you have a question?
So if you have a pre-apprenticeship program, you mentioned that the apprenticeship programs, you have to have an employer first, and they become employees of that employer. With the pre-apprenticeship program, is that still a requirement that they have to have an employer, or can they go through the school and then kind of match up as well for the on-the-job training?
Do you want to answer? You can answer.
So with the quality pre-apprenticeship program, you have to partner with the registered apprenticeship sponsor. So the sponsor has to be at the table to help create the quality pre-apprenticeship, to help try to marry that pipeline of skilled workers that you're bringing in from the quality pre-apprenticeship to the registered apprenticeship, and trying to help learn the skills and the on-the-job learning components, so that registered apprentice or that quality pre-apprentice can actually jump over some of the components of a registered apprenticeship program and possibly be a year ahead in their registered apprenticeship program.
So if you're in the pre-apprenticeship program, you would not be an employee of the sponsor.
That is correct. You wouldn't be an official employee. There would be some on-the-job learning tasks that you would that'd be defined within your program. But if you're creating something for the business, we would encourage the employer to actually pay that apprentice a wage for whatever they're creating. So it depends on the on-the-job learning component, on what they're doing and what they're learning, if that wage would be there. But there's no requirement of a wage in the quality pre-apprenticeship program.
And very quickly on quality pre-apprenticeship, obviously the word free gives the indication that there's something to follow. So if that's apprenticeship, so we have to connect with those apprenticeship sponsors, but we're trying to change the way we think of things and the way we do things. A lot of times, and this is no on one side or the other, education will develop something and say, here employers take it, and the employers then get angry, no, that's not what I want. And Dean can speak very well to this, on how that partnership and how those classes evolved and where it met the needs of the students and met the needs of the school while meeting the needs of business. And that's all it is. It's a change of the way we kind of think of things, and not so much a change of the way we do business, but how we apply that. And that's all. That's why it's very important that quality pre-apprenticeship has that sponsor component, or else who's telling you that this is what Chuck needs if Chuck's not at the table? Does that make sense? Amy, can you quickly just tell, because does anybody have any last questions on that? Because
I just have a testimonial. We're talking a lot about apprenticeship programs and things, and 3 years ago, I believe it was, we started working with the Department of Labor and Richard Madsen to develop our apprenticeship standards and all that. And I have to say that it was an absolutely wonderful experience. The Department of Labor and Richard Madsen are tremendous. And if you're
appreciate that. Amy, can you just tell them where to find more information? Thank you.
Yep, you can find more information on the Department of Labor's website at dol.gov/apprenticeship. You can also go on iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov underneath our resource with Apprenticeship USA. You can find an online toolbox, which there's an actual print-off copy back in the back for all of you. And you can find some federal resource guides on how other federal benefits can line up with registered apprenticeship. And then on our iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov website, you can find one-pagers to help with a job seeker or the employer side, depending on which one you're more interested in.